if I can remember it. I in a hurry this morning. Okay, this father looks in his teenage boy's room and he sees that everything is spotless. He says, something's up. So on the bed, he sees this letter and it says, Dear Dad, I just left to get married. Peggy Sue's pregnant. Don't worry, I'm 15. We'll take care of ourselves. She just had her tongue pierced. The baby's going to be fine. And he said, let me think what else he said. He was just saying, and I took the car. I knew you didn't need it, but I needed to take the car so we could get married. Took whatever was in your bank account, and you'll see us soon. And at the bottom of the letter it says, love your son so and so. And then it says, P.S. Dad, this letter was just to let you know none of it's true. There's worse things than a bad report card that's on the table in the living room. I'm over at Jacob's house. Good, I had it in my head. I didn't know if I had it in my head because I forgot to print it. But anyway, okay, I'm going to start with a quote this morning. It says, the great mission of our day is not to conquer the sea, or space, or disease, or tyranny. The great quest which calls to the hero in every one of us is to become fully alive, to stand up and claim our birthright, which is inner freedom, love, radiant purpose. By fulfilling this, we transform the world. And what I want to say this morning, I'm going to talk about the hero's journey, and I'm looking at the hero this morning. Every single one of you is the hero of your story. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit this morning. And what I want to say is the world that we've been living in, what we really learned here is an illusion. It's not what we thought it was it? And Reba did such a wonderful job last week. I love when somebody else talks and I get to be fed, and Reba was phenomenal. But we're learning that life is not random. We've talked about synchronicity, which I'm going to talk more about today, but life is not random. Everything that's happening to us is happening for a purpose. Everything, and it's purposeful. And what we're really here to do is learn to love. Every one of you is that hero that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about this hero's journey because what we talked about last week, we were saying many of us are going through difficult times. I know I'm going through some shifts in my life. And so we're looking for answers, and we're looking for how to plug in, and we're looking for, how to really overcome these things. So Joseph Campbell wrote a book. How many of you have read the book, Hero with a Thousand Faces? Oh, it's one of my favorite books. It's probably one of the most powerful books of the 20th century. If you haven't read it, it's all about myths and how there was a common cycle or a pattern running through all the ancient heroes' myths, stories around the world. But now, others have taken it further. I just got this book, The Synchronicity Key. If you haven't read it, it's phenomenal. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it because it came to me synchronistically at a perfect time in my life. But now others are finding that the cycles are written in every movie, every TV show, every great story, every novel. And they're even written in the ebb and flow of events in our universe, in our history. In this book, it begins to show how the zodiac and all of they cut it down, each one of the zodiac signs into 4 parts, and how wars keep coming right on schedule, and these men can predict them because they come in different ways. How many things in your life keep coming around? They might not come as violently as they did the first time because you handle them differently, but there's a cycle. Years ago, it says in the Bible that God sits on the circle of the earth and works in the cycle. Everything in this world is cyclic. Have you ever thought about that? The rain comes down, dries up, goes back up again. We travel around the sun. All of the things, everything in the world is cyclic. Our lives are cyclic. We come as a baby, and it's all cyclic. So in the cycle of the universe, we're seeing the same symbols. It's the book of life. It's the great story everyone goes through. You as the hero go through the story daily. We go through it through our life, but daily we're going through it. And each one of us is the hero of our own story. So when we talk about this, I want you to think about, where are you in your story today? Because the story's not always, when you wake up to spirituality, you think, I'm just going to be like Tiny Tim and tiptoe through the garden. But how many of you have found it wasn't like that at all? Not at all like that. So let's find where we are in the story. In a sense, every movie, every play, every TV show, and every myth is a spiritual ceremony that evokes deep memories in the part of truth that's within us. How many of you saw Avatar? I mean, didn't that evoke something in you when you saw that tree of life? And when you saw the things that were happening in that movie, that's one of the best examples, which I'm going to use through here, but there's so many other. Most people don't see the deeper truth hidden until they begin to awaken. How many of us, like the Wizard of Oz, we saw it as kids and maybe we didn't see the symbology in it. But as we began to awaken and we saw that screen come down and that little wizard sitting behind the screen, we began to see that it was symbology. You know, the fairy tales, I lost a few people years ago when I started saying that the fairy tales were mythology, because all the fairy tales are telling the same story. You know, you get kissed by the prince and you begin to wake up. The 7 dwarfs, why 7? I mean, every single one of them is mythology. So most people don't see that deeper meaning until we begin to wake up. But here's the great key that they contain, all of them. We don't need to keep suffering. How many of us love suffering? I know in my life stuff is coming up right now, but I'm not enjoying it. I don't think any of us enjoy suffering. But the message is always we don't need to suffer, and the message is we win. And every single one, we win, and they lived happily ever after. And once we understand the hidden design of the universe in our lives, when we do, we can immediately change our lives, like Reba was talking about last week, and improve our lives by consciously mastering each of our experiences instead of just going through like victims, which is what we've done in the past, haven't we? I know when I was in organized religion, I was the victim. You know, the devil was always after me. And I know when we have a television program, we'd have people call up, you know, telling us how the devil was on them and all of that. But what happens when we wake up, we realize that we're the creator, not the victim. We begin to know that we can change our lives. And that's what the hero's journey is all about. So last week, Reba talked about how we're all going through these huge shifts, huge changes, huge challenges. How many's not going through any challenges in their lives right now? Please stand up, because I'd like to see you after service. Because I don't know. And it resonated with me because I'm like you. I'm going through things right now, you know, that I totally don't understand, and that my stuff has come up that I'm beginning to deal with. You know, I've always said we deal with things on a spiral. We deal with them when we're, you know, unconscious. And then as we begin to, you know, wake up, they come back around. We think we've dealt with them, but then they come back around. But we deal with them from a higher perspective. And that's really where we are right now. So how can we, so I've been asking, and seeking, and meditating, having readings, and doing all the things we all do to try to find clarity in our lives. How can we all move from a place of pain, weakness, sorrow, humiliation, betrayal, anger, and fear into a world of happiness and peace and harmony? How can we move? But more than that, how can we stay there? Because we move there, don't we? But then something gets us and brings us back into that 3D reality. So as we take a deeper look at our universe and the cycles and world events, we begin to see nothing is at random. Things keep repeating again and again in precise cycles. And if you don't believe it, I mean, I can't in 45 minutes, you know, tell you this big book. But if you get it, he goes through all the wars, all the, it's just, it boggles your brain when you can see there's a plan. And there's a plan for your life. And that's the good news. And the events that occur with these cycles are always telling the very same story. You know, I remember years ago, I was reading the book of Revelation, and you know, people talk about revelations. That's not what that book said. It says revelation. It's singular. There's only one revelation. And the revelation is you're God, and you are waking up to that. That's the only revelation there is. And when I saw that and thought how, you know, we talk about helicopters and tribulation and wars and all of these things, and it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the revelation of you awakening to the Christ within you. All of these 7 seals and all of those things are what's opening. Your chakra system's opening, that you can be fully invested with who you are. So all of these things are coming back, and the events that occur are telling the same story. Our worldwide book of life. And I'll never forget, I was in a Pentecostal church one time, and this guy was saying, is your name written in the book of life? If your name's not written in the book of life, you know, they can blot you right out of the book of life. And Spirit said to me, clear, Isabel, he said, you are the book of life. I said, I am the book of life. He said, yeah, you are the book of life. And you know, even in these past few weeks, I'm beginning to see a greater reality of that. I am the book of life, and so are you. You're the book of life. 3 weeks ago, I spoke on some of the repeating cycles, so I'm just going to mention them. If you haven't, you can get them on my YouTube or on Joanne's Link of Expert channel. But I talked about Kennedy and Lincoln and the similarities. Lincoln was elected to Congress, in 1846, and John Kennedy, 1946. Lincoln was elected president in 1860, Kennedy, 1960. Both were shot on a Friday. Both were succeeded by a man named Johnson. John Wilkes Booth was born in 1839, and Lee Harvey Oswald was born in 1939. But both of them died with their heads in their wife's lap. And one got shot in a theater and ran to a warehouse. One got shot from a warehouse and ran to a theater. And it was like 100 years. You see these cycles keep repeating. And we say, oh, it's just coincidence. No, what we're waking up to is these are cycles that are teaching us lessons, and when we get them, they begin to go away because we're beginning to wake up. But what are you finding is there's a unified conscious energy field that generates entire cosmos, everything. I love Reba when she talks about astrology. Because all of the planets, all the stars, Mother Earth, they're living beings, and they do have influences on our lives, which I'm going to get to. And this hidden energy is what they're calling the source field. And this new science, just like I said, everything is more alive than we've ever imagined. When we moved into this age of Aquarius, everything shifted. The game is not the same. Nothing will ever be the same. We thought on 2012 everything would shift. We'd see all these great changes, but that's not what happened. But internally, how many of you are pushing against the rules right now? It's like the rules just don't fit you anymore. And your family looks at you like, oh, you Matthew? Good. Your family looks like you're cuckoo. But it's like, we don't want to be restrained. We want freedom. We want to get out of those boxes that have kept us, that we can be realized as divinity. So things maybe on the outside haven't shifted. We can see the world events like the elections and things like that. But on the inside, we're feeling those things that we're never going to be the same. Life will never be the same. In other words, our universe is alive. More alive than we can imagine. Space, time, matter, energy, and biological life may be the result of a source field that's come alive with a consciousness that's acting with us in this great plan, even more than our own finite minds can fathom. And that's what we're trying to wake up to. When we held hands this morning and we are interconnected with all that is, what does that mean to you? To be interconnected with all that is. That's big. Do we live like that? Do we live like we are connected, to all that is? And the universe itself is a living being. And the majority of ancient cultures, they consistently thought that history moved in cycles. I taught that Mayan calendar for many years. And we could see the Mayans way back then, which I think they were influenced by much higher consciousness, but they knew that we were living in cycles. And they know we are definitely not alone. How many of you think we're the only ones on life on planet Earth right now? We're having somebody come from Ancient Aliens, November 20th. He's going to tell you, we're not alone. We are not alone, and we're waking up to that. Nor do we only have one life to live. When they always say, live your life because you only have one life to live? Not. You've been around many times. We're finding each other. We're giving each other signals. I remember when I met Pam. There was something in me that sparked. And also Nana. Nana had this bowl on her head out on the park and these little shorts on. And something in me said, you're going to be good friends with her. You're going to work with her. And I thought, really? She had rocks and bowl in her head and all this stuff. And I thought, what am I going to do with her? And she was talking all this, Isis, Pisces stuff. And I was still kind of in religion. But I didn't even talk to her that day. But I knew. Because we're beginning to recognize each other. And 16, 17 years later that we've been working together, it turned out to be true. And Pam, over 20 years we've been working together. So there's an undeniable scientific evidence that we reincarnate again and again. And we also keep moving through the same lessons in history as we repeat these precise patterns. And what this book does, it's just phenomenal how it really brings that to the surface. And when it brings it to the surface, then you know it for your life. And it's synchronicity that gives us the key to explore these greater realities. And this is what synchronicity in plain language is. Synchronicity is a mysterious event in which two or more things happen at the same time that seem directly related to each other, though they would normally be unfathomable. You just can't believe it. You know, you think about somebody and you pick, you know, the phone rings. Or you think about somebody you haven't seen in years and you're in Home Depot and you run into them. Or these are things that are beginning to see, or people come into your life. You know, I remember, nothing ever comes easy to me though. I wanted to be friends with Pam and she was singing at Pappas, and I'd go up to the stage and I'd try to talk to her, you know, and she'd blow me off, didn't want to be bothered. I thought, I'm going to be friends with that girl whether she likes it or not. Finally, our kids went to school together, and I started a prison ministry, needed some music, and that's how we started. But how many of us are beginning to really see the synchronicities in our life? Open to them, expect them, ask for them, you know, awaken to them. You know, I want to say, people say to me, how did you learn to talk? Well, years ago, I had a neighbor, and her husband was vice president of Innisbrook. And one day, Gretchen came over, and she says, Mary Lou, how'd you like a job? Talking on a bus, taking the tours for Innisbrook. You know, they only will call you when there's big busloads of people, and, you know, you get paid this. I can't remember what I got paid, but I said, God, that sounds like fun. They just, you know, 1 or 2 days a week or whenever they had it. So I said, I'll do it. Never spoke before in front of anybody. So for 6 years, I began doing these bus tours, talking every day on a microphone, taking them into the Greek church, taking the Innis paintings, telling them all the history of everything. Lo and behold, I began to learn to speak in front of people. And that was my training. I always say, look at what you're doing today, and it's really training you for what you're going to do tomorrow. And then also, years ago, when I was dating, I dated when I was in high school, I was with a guy in a car, and we turned on this radio, and this program came on. It was The World Tomorrow. Anybody ever heard of that? Herbert Armstrong? Well, I heard that program, and it was talking about this world tomorrow that was coming with peace and all of this. Well, it planted a seed in me. And after I got married, my brother began to listen to the program too, and I ended up joining that church for 27 years, and that's how I know the Bible so well. I mean, I studied for hours every day for 27 years, and now, once I began to awaken and have these out-of-body experiences and see that the Bible was really a metaphysical book, I can see where those scriptures are on the page of my Bible now, because I studied it for so long. But it was preparing me really not to know the Bible that way, which I studied for 20, but to be able to say it's a metaphysical book, and to help bring those Christians to see that it's so much bigger and broader, that it's really about astrotheology and numerology and all of these, it's genetics. You know, the atom, and Adam was split. You know, it's not what, I've helped free people from some of that stuff. So we are all of those synchronicities in our lives, from the time you were born, have brought you to where you are today. They really have. And here's another one of the biggest secrets of show business I'm going to tell you right now. Almost every movie, regardless whether it's a drama, a thriller, a horror, a science fiction, fantasy, or a romance, is telling the same story. And it's always the hero's journey. And it's always a story that's trying to help you wake up. When we were little kids and we were watching Alice in Wonderland, and we were watching all of those things, you know, Beauty and the Beast, and all of those things, you know, there was a memory within there that was trying to wake us up when we were doing that. So it begins with a main character. Let me just talk about this story a little bit. With obvious flaws. How about us? Do we have, in the beginning, obvious flaws? And it sends him or her on a quest for something that is deeply passionate and desired in their life. For me, it was, why am I here? What's it all about? I want to know God. I remember being 19, 20 and going to some ministers and saying, you know, I want to talk about, what does this mean? And how do you get close to God? They didn't want to talk about those things back then. You know, they didn't want those deep questions. They just want to get you saved on Sunday, and that was the end of it. But it was a yearning. I can remember, I've told this story many times, I can remember, you know, sitting in the car with my parents, and that song, Row, Row, Row Your Boat, come along, and I'd say, life is but a dream, and I thought, life is but a dream. You know, my birthday's coming, but as soon as it comes, it's fleeting. Christmas coming, but as soon as I get the gifts, the party's over. There's nothing you can park on. There's nothing you can hold on to. Something's missing here. And I began that journey of wanting to know, and that's why I think joined the Worldwide Church of God because they had a Bible study, and it was like an intense. When we went to church, we took notes, and it was intense. But anyway, we all start with something. So I wanted to know, what was God, and why did this God want to be worshipped? And why would a loving God send everybody to hell? These were questions that we come in our mind. So I lost a lot of friends when I joined that church because I observed the Sabbath. I observed all the holy days, the Old Testament holy days. Lost a lot of friends. How many of you did that when you came maybe into this course? You lose friends, and your family thinks you're crazy. I didn't want to do certain things because I was trying to adhere to the rules, and you really pull apart. So it's rough sometimes. So the character goes through a rough time when we are trying to reach our goal. So many people come into this and they think it's just going to be a walk in the park. And then they come to me and say, why is my whole life falling apart here? What's happening here? Because we're being initiated. Things are changing. We've got to come out of that ordinary situation. And the film breaks away from this structure. Many films break away from this structure, but you know what Hollywood knows? It knows we vote by the wallet. And the people that want the same story over and over again. So the ones that do break from this plot, they don't make the money. And if the film is to be commercial success, they have to have this pattern. There's books written on it. There's books written on this pattern of the hero's journey that's in every movie that's successful. They know. They know the ones that are going to be successful because of that. Like Avatar. Listen, Avatar is currently the top grossing movie of all time. How'd you feel when you watched Avatar? Didn't it bring something primordial up in you? You were feeling part of that. You knew deep down it was bringing some of your journey. And it's a point-by-point illustration. So was The Matrix. How many of you watched The Matrix? Point-by-point illustration. Star Wars. I remember taking my little boy to Star Wars. The Force is with you. How many of us didn't know the Force was with us all the time? We were never alone. How about Lion King? Oh gosh, that was it. And Dancing with Wolves and Pocahontas, which are some of the most obvious ones when we watch them. But all these stories can be broken into 3 acts, and that's what I want to talk about today, 3 acts. The beginning, middle, and ending, or the setup, the conflict, and the resolution. And this basic structure was first recognized and spelled out many thousands of years ago by Aristotle. He knew all this. And it's similar to all the ancient myths all over the world. So Joseph Campbell called it, labeled it, the hero's journey, which I love, because the hero is the one that always wins. And when we really understand it, we can see that we're going to win. We're always going to win. And that's what I love about the Bible too. The Bible says we win. They talk about all these terrible things, but in the end, it says God all and in all. That's the end result of everything. So it's how we work through our weaknesses. And each and every day in our lives, we are. All of us. I'm not exempt, you're not exempt. We are working through our weaknesses. And it's ultimate a blueprint of our evolution. And it's our path to the golden age. Campbell worked on the work of Carl Jung, who found that the ancient myths kept repeating it in our dreams, and they called them archetypes. And they reviewed some of this. The most important archetypes, this is a quote, appears to be the shadow. And listen to what it is. It's the inferior aspect of the self which we hide from others. Now, how many of us hide those things? And we push them down. I always say when we have those things, it's like a beach ball. If you have a big old beach ball in the pool and you push it down, you can push it down for a while, but what happens? It keeps popping up, doesn't it? And that's what happens in our life. Do we really bring those fears and all of those archetypes up? They keep popping up in our life, and that's your hero story. That's what your soul has made this story for you, so all of those things can come up. And they're a reflection of our unconscious mind, and it's happening individually, but it's also happening collectively, historically, throughout the universe. The same story, over and over and over again. In the Bible, we see the story of the prodigal son. And here's the story. The hero of the story runs away from home. He thinks he's in big trouble because he's leaving everything. He eventually comes back and fearing the worst when he comes back, only to find that he's been loved the entire time. Hello, that's you. How many of us felt so guilty when we were in churches? Because I was ready for the hammer to come down all the time. I told you I used to make a list of how to be nice. Because, I didn't feel nice inside. When you're not loved, when you don't know that you're loved unconditionally, you can't give away what you don't have. So I would make these lists of how to be nice and sweet to people. But once I knew I was loved, it's like it just flows out of you. I remember being in the prison ministries. We'd have these big old guys in front of us that we'd be praying for. And I can remember just being a channel. They would be crying, and all this love would be flowing out. Because once you know who you are, you can give that away. Until you know who you are, you don't have it to give away. And I remember Spirit saying that. But so he came home to find he had been loved the whole time, and he is completely forgiven and welcomed home with open arms. That's your story. There's nothing you can do. No decision you can make. No act you can do ever separate you from love. Nothing. And that's what we need to know, because we're getting rid of that guilt. Successful filmmakers like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, all have these patterns in their movies because they realize people have a built-in operating system that has a deep underlying need to keep hearing these stories over and over again. Every time you go to the movie, you watch Avatar, you watch Matrix, it's telling you that same story over and over again, and it's waking that primordial knowing of truth within you that you can begin to see this. It's the grand journey of initiation, individually and globally. During the initiation, the hero will have to confront his flaws directly. I know I'm doing that in my life. How many of you are beginning to see and really have to look at the flaws that you have? In the first act, we see that the hero's weaknesses like lack of courage, lack of intelligence, being naive, selfish, greed, lack of love for others. Then the major event happens. It's called an insightful incident that draws our hero into the quest. Have you had that insightful incident? Have people ever come and started telling you believe wrong, or kind of, and then that's that incident that really starts to spark something, and you got to make a decision whether you're going to be on the quest or not, or draw back? I think it happens more than once because we go through this continually. But it's that insightful incident. In some films, it's a sudden tragedy that hurts or destroys something out the hero loves deeply. In geopolitics, it sparks a war. Remember in Avatar? Remember the war? And then in a romantic movie, it's when our hero first sees a new romantic interest. But it's that's insightful incident that propels our main character on the hero's journey. Think about your life right now. What happened to begin to propel you on that journey? What incident really happened? I was thinking about Eckhart Tolle when I was writing this morning. He was ready for suicide. And that was his insightful incident that really started his journey. And the question is deeply primal, coming from the hero's struggle to fulfill basic emotions and desires. But here's the key. This will cause the hero, you and me, to face our worst flaws, our worst fears, and defeat them in order to really get what we want, which is that elixir of immortality. How many of you want to die? The Bible says this, it said the last enemy to be overcome is death. And really, that is what we all fear. But we know there is no death, but we have that elixir of immortality. And when we really begin to face those things, we are really changing. And maybe that where you are today, how many of you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you today, and I believe because of the energies and what's happening, and Reba could probably explain it much better than she did last week than I, those things are coming up right now for us to face. And either we're going to face them, face our shadows, or we're going to go back in. Just go back into a boring life. Or we're going to face those shadows with courage and really stand up. And I think that's where we are today, really ready to do that. But through all these patterns, we see that the soul has orchestrated these insightful incidents for each of us. Your soul planned it. You said this is going to happen at this part of my life. And it's going to help me, to spur me on, to face my fears, to walk in courage and strength and walk through this. And I'm talking to me. I'm talking to you, but I'm also always talking to me, like you said, Reba, some things I don't want to talk about because then they hit me head on the next week, or after that. I kind of weigh what I'm going to talk about. But I'm going through the same things right now. We all are, because we are being purified. We are really being purified that we can do these things. So we're willing to lay down our egos and face those shadows so we can be healed. Because when you're healed, you're healing the whole world. That's how we do it. We heal ourselves, and when we heal ourselves, it heals the whole world. And here's the beautiful key. After that insightful incident, the hero has a period of debating whether or not to go on the quest. You know, he wrings his hands and he shifts back and forth. And that's where the mentors come in and first appear. On the subconscious level, we recognize this mentor as our main guide, even a guide between lives, who starts us in each incarnation and reviews. We begin to get this magic gift or talisman from our mentor that might not seem important at the time, but it's a tool that later becomes vital to our survival. In Star Wars, it was when Obi-Wan Kenobi gave Luke that father's lightsaber. Remember that? First he got it, but he didn't know what it was going to be for, but it was life-saving for him. In some stories in your life, the magic gift is not physical, but it's a decisive statement from somebody. One person said to me recently, you're going through a death. And you know what? I kept thinking about it. It was like a statement. It was a gift. And I began to see more clearly, you know, what was happening in my life. Or it could be a revelation that inspires the hero, you, to pursue your quest. And the magic gift may be a piece of information or a piece of advice or an important key. For me, it's been this book. I was not going to order this book. I wanted the Ascension Mysteries. So I got on Amazon and I began to order the Ascension Mysteries, and then I saw this book and I thought, you know, I might as well get both of his books. And then they came and I thought, I'm going to read this one first. Well, I know why. Because my soul said, you're drawing it in because it's right where you are today. And it's going to help you and encourage you. It's going to be a magic gift to you to help you get through the things that you're experiencing right now. So we get those gifts if we decide to walk through the challenge. So I wasn't originally going to get it, but it's been a gift. And the magic gift can be seen as synchronicity, a memory that triggers us. Like I said with Pam, there was something that triggered me that I knew that she was going to be in my life for some reason. She didn't know. I had to keep pursuing her and knock her around a little bit before she knew. But once I got her, we've been, you know, walking together ever since. But it's something that triggers that memory, and we plan out in advance to inspire us to take the quest at a key moment in our life. It happens at these key moments. So we will choose to go the quest rather than step back into the ordinary world of ego with its flaws and continue living boring lives. Things are endlessly repeating the same fears over and over again. And many of us, a lot less than we could achieve, experience that really, if we could walk through it, is going to bring in life so abundantly. The big breakthrough occurs when we become strong enough to stand up and face our fears. And how many of you run from them? I have. How many of you think in your life when you don't want to face them? You know, sometimes you don't want to open an envelope or answer the phone or hear what somebody has to say. You just don't want to, because of fear. But when you're empowered and you do whatever it is, it changes everything for you. That's the big breakthrough when we really begin to progress. But in spiritual terms, we think of time as linear. But in spiritual times, it moves in cycles. And these cycles have been called the wheels of karma, or the book of life, the great story, the hero's journey. And when we move through these struggles, we learn the lessons of love, and sustainable love that's going to carry us. And that's what we're really here to do, is really learn those lessons of love. We start at the top of the wheel, and we feel great with a little, no conscious awareness of our key flaws. And we be self-serving, lacking courage. But as we move through, we begin to awaken, and we begin to face those things. Everything in our life is working to totally awaken us. And right now, I feel like the energies are so dominant and really helping us like never before. You are not alone. You are on the hero's journey. And then it says after that, all of these helpers come in. You remember when the army came in to help the avatars? And that's what you find. You know, people start calling you and offering you things and wanting to support you and all of those things. Once you say, yes, I'm going to take that quest. Yes, I'm going to walk. It's like all of these reserves begin to come in and you're carried to the finish. And I loved Reba's story last week when she ran over that finish line and those people came up next to her and ran with her. That was the hero's journey, Reba. That was exactly what it is. You start the journey, but then all of these come beside you and help you, support you as you finish the journey. And you win. That's the hero's story too. We can't lose. You're a winner. That's why it's called the hero, because you can't lose. And if we can begin to see that and really understand and embrace those fears and bring them to the surface so that we can really expel them and really finish the race like Reba did. Everything in life is changing right now. The foundation that you thought was solid isn't. I don't care where you are in your life. Nothing stays the same. Everything is changing. But we're learning to go with the changes. We're learning that we're the hero. And if we just take the challenge and we step out and we begin to really put our focus on where we're going, everything just comes there to support us. So I just want to encourage you this morning, whatever you're going through, wherever you are in your life right now, it's all good. Your soul planned it, wherever you are, and you're going to make it. Nothing can trip you up. You know, in religion we always thought we could backslide or, nothing can trip you up. You're a winner. You're a hero. And so it is. Anybody have anything they